Welcome to Mommispace, the podcast for moms of all stages. My name is Kay Jenin, and this podcast was created to give moms a voice to share their experiences and to share that there is not just one way to be a mom. This is a place where you can learn to love the woman inside the mother. Thanks so much for tuning in again this week. We actually are going to hear from my sweet, sweet friend Melissa. She's a genius, okay? Everything she says inspires the crap out of me. And she's a mama. She's a therapist. She loves the Enneagram. And I just love her. So I thought, let's talk about the Enneagram. I know it can be really overwhelming for some people and confusing and seem like a cult thing. And then for some people, they've been there, done that. And so I wanted to reach both groups of people. Basically, what we're going to talk about is some fun stuff and then what we did once we found out our Enneagram number, the resources we used to grow in that, and just kind of your next steps. So I hope you enjoy our talk. I hope you love Melissa as much as I do. And I wanted to start today with my favorite thing of the week, because that's what we do, right? My favorite thing this week is an audiobook. Actually, I love Audible. I am too busy of a human being to sit down and read a book. I can't wait till my kids are older and then I can sit and read with them. But I don't know. I like doing the dishes while I listen to Audible or going for a walk or anything, grocery shopping, honestly, anything. And the book I'm loving right now, it is called The Call of the Wild and Free by Ainsley Arment. There's also a podcast. I'll link the audiobook and the podcast down below, but I love this audiobook. If you don't know, we intend on homeschooling our kids, but this is just such a beautiful book about the innocence and the freedom of childhood and learning how to connect with our kids as they're little and make every moment a learning moment. And I think whatever kind of education you choose for your child, I think it's just really awe-inspiring, and I would recommend it to anybody to listen to it. I've really enjoyed it, and whoever is narrating it, her voice is beautiful to me, so I've been loving that one. All right, now that you know my favorite thing of the week, we can go into our time with my sweet, sweet friend, Melissa. All right, welcome to Mommispace. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today, we're going to be talking with my friend Melissa. She is awesome. She's a therapist. She is an intentional mama. She's somebody who always inspires me and makes me laugh and makes me feel better about being who I am. And so I thought I would love to talk to her about the Enneagram and about therapy. So this episode is all going to be about the Enneagram. And I just want to say thanks so much for joining us, Melissa.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to dive in because you and I, we kind of geek out on the Enneagram, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's like my favorite thing. And I think it's so like trendy right now, which kind of steers some people away. So kind of my goal, I guess, for us talking is to make it more palatable, I guess, so that people don't just feel like it's a trend and it's something that's, how can this actually be used beyond just now I can just relate to all the posts about it. So first, will you start us off by telling us about your family?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the mama to 4 and the wife to 1. I have a 12-year-old, 10-year-old, 6-year-old, and a 2-year-old. I was supposed to be done after my 3rd because I got my baby girl, but we weren't done yet. I do work outside of the home after being a stay-at-home mom for 10 years, and I have loved both seasons and am fully embracing this season of being able to have an outlet outside of just raising babies. And recently we became foster parents, so we are in that new journey as well.
Oh yeah, that's so exciting. I know that's something Chris and I are really interested in, and I'm definitely going to be utilizing you as a resource for that at some point.
Yes.
And I think it's crazy. I don't think I've ever really heard your age span in kids. Like that's a big span. Like you're dealing with little babies and with like almost a teenager. That's insane. I
Yes,
can't even
yes.
imagine.
Well, I was a young mama like you. So when I was pregnant with my first, I couldn't drink. I mean, obviously because you're pregnant, but I hadn't hit my 21st birthday yet either. So I started young, and took a break after my second. My mother-in-law told me having them back to back was easier. It wasn't. It wasn't for me, at least. That was not going to be part of my journey. And my two eldest had diagnoses at about 2.5. And so they were each doing, I don't know, like 5 to 6 therapies a week. And I just didn't feel like I could be a good mama to a third at that point. So we took some time and did a lot of early developmental therapies to help them be their best selves. And it's not anything that I regret even to this day.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think it's different for everyone. Chris and I really want to have them close together, but I'm also terrified of that. Like, excited yet terrified.
Yes.
And we'll see. Maybe I'll completely change my mind and be like, everyone lied. So you work outside of the house. What do you do?
Yeah, so I had an awesome opportunity after I finished my graduate degree in social work to pilot a new program. And I get to work with mamas who have a substance abuse disorder and help them define what recovery and wellness looks like in their life, and then get them the supports and tools they need to be the healthiest versions of themselves.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. That sounds dreamy. I mean, it's probably really hard at times, but you get to actually have an effect in moms' lives and make them feel more competent and like better moms.
Yes, yes. And all done non-judgmentally, because we all, I believe, are addicted to something. Some things are legal, some things aren't. Some things have more detrimental impact on our lives and those around us. Some we can do secretly and we don't feel like it impacts. And so it doesn't need to be addressed right away. And so coming from that mindset that at any point any of us could be in their shoes really helps me come alongside them in a much more loving fashion.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good because we all like have that vice, but some of them are socially acceptable and some of them are not.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about the Enneagram because we both love the Enneagram. How do you feel like it's affected your life?
So I got asked recently what my marital advice would be. My husband and I are going on 13 years. And the thing that popped into my head at the beginning was know your Enneagram and know your husband's, or at that point, your fiance's Enneagram, because it is probably one of the most important tools you can have going into any deep, meaning, fulfilling relationship. And so if that is any indicator into how important Enneagram is, like, I think it's a cornerstone to healthy relationships.
Yeah. How do you feel like it works practically every day in your relationship with your husband? What's your husband's name?
Joe.
Oh, I knew that. How does that work like every day in your life? How do you implement that?
Well, it helps give me a better understanding of why I'm reacting a certain way in any given situation, what my motivators are, what my core fear is in a conversation or in an experience in my life. So it gives me a way to communicate more effectively with my husband, and then also conversely to understand where he's coming from, what his core fears are, what his soul needs to hear in any given moment, and some things that I can help him understand in the moment or be able to be more gentle with him in the moment as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. What's like one specific thing that the Enneagram has brought to light in yourself?
So it's helped center me, because I don't want to get into wings yet, but so I'm an Enneagram 4. 1,000%. I took the Enneagram test probably 3 to 4 years ago. And the 4, it was like coming home. As I'm reading through it, as I'm better understanding why I am the way I am, it didn't feel generic. It felt like someone opened a door into my soul and was like, I see you, I validate you, what you bring and what you offer is important. And so when I can ground myself in that on a daily basis and not become overwhelmed or self-depreciating about, for example, I just feel really deeply. And sometimes that is like one of my greatest assets. And sometimes it can hinder me and not allow me to be present because I'm feeling so much in any given state. So for my husband, it's really allowed him to understand why I need so much downtime and alone time, because I'm constantly processing everything around me and I need time to just be by myself, where I don't have to navigate someone else's feelings or mine, and I can just give myself rest. So it doesn't feel selfish anymore. It just feels like really good self-care.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay, you and I still are talking about what is Kay's Enneagram. No one knows. It's a mystery. But I feel really strongly that's a 1 still, though I really associate with a lot of different ones. But the reason I feel that is because I'm so strongly motivated by right and wrong and black and white and like, this is the right way to do it and I can't get over it. And I didn't realize until I started learning about the Enneagram how angry I was all the time. I thought I was emotional. I actually was like, I think I'm a 4 because I'm very emotional and I am very deep in the way I process things. But I get emotional because I'm angry about things being wrong or them not being the best or people doing wrong things or people not caring about others. I get angry and then I cry. And I never understood that everything I was doing was through that filter of anger. And having that realization really helps now when I'm so upset about something not being right. I know like, okay, this is a K thing. Like it's okay what you're feeling, but it's not fully reality. Like it's a piece of reality, but there's other facets to what's going on too. And being able to explain to myself and to my husband, like, I'm just angry because it doesn't feel right. And it gives an understanding. And I've always been like that, where if I understand why something's happening, I can cope with it much better. And I feel like knowing I feel this way because really helps me put everything into perspective and understand it's not wrong, it's not right, like how I feel, but it doesn't need to be such a big deal right now. Like I can calm down and it's okay. But like, it just makes things more realistic, like what's happening and to like bring yourself down. So I agree. I think it just brought a lot of light to some of those things functioning in me, though the jury's still out on if I'm a 1 or not. But then, okay, I have another question for you. So in what way do you relate to, like, what's one thing with Joe that you feel like you're able to understand better if you feel comfortable sharing something like that?
Oh yeah, I'm totally an open book. So my husband is a 9 and he was able to identify as a 9. I had been into Enneagram for like 6 months. I think maybe, I don't know, maybe that's being too generous. Maybe I lasted like a week before I was like, here, take this, because I need to know. I have a guess at what you are, but I need you to take this so that I can better understand. And he identified as a 9. And one of the things with 9s is that they're peacemakers. And so in our relationship, I would tell Joe something really passionate. I did my research, or I felt like this group of people were wronged. And he would always bring up the opposite person's point of view.
Like the devil's advocate.
Which, yes. And it would aggravate me to no end because I needed to feel validated. I needed to know that I had been heard and that what I was experiencing was worth taking the time to investigate. And so when I was able to understand that one of his gifts is being able to see things from both people's perspective, it helped me be more loving in my reaction, but it also helped him understand that what I needed in that moment wasn't to hear the other person's point of view. It was just to offer comfort in that moment of saying, yeah, that's really hard. Yeah, that would really be, difficult to experience. Like that's what I needed. So kind of coming together and seeing each other's strengths in those moments allowed it to be a lot more peaceful when we had, a lot of heated discussions.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think Chris has been a hard one to type, and I feel pretty confident that he's a 6 wing 5. But we honestly have not dived in and like really talked about what that means for him. But sometimes, like he always says, whenever he takes personality assessments, they don't make any sense. He's like, no, I'm not confined to a box. Like that doesn't work for me. And that's one of the beautiful things about the Enneagram is I don't feel that it confines you to a box, because they say like you can have something in common with every single type. And just because you read something and you're like, oh, I don't agree with that, that doesn't mean you're not in that type. They're just talking in general. But when you're reading it and things just speak to your heart, you're like, okay, that is like me, and that makes sense. And so with him, for the 6 wing 5 that we've kind of discovered, and we're still discovering more in how that impacts the way we relate. But he gets angry a lot, but it's not because he's truly angry. It's because he's scared, because type 6s tend to get nervous, and they're always looking at the world as like the worst possible situation. They're worried about what's going to happen. And so Chris gets angry because he's worried about what that's going to turn into. And that comes out for him like anger and frustration. And so it helps me understand when he's mad, he's not mad at me, but something going on in the situation is causing him to be worried. And so we can address that rather than being like, why are you so mad? And really getting to the root of it much faster. Where for me, when I'm crying, he knows that's probably because you're mad.
Yes.
So let's talk about typing our kids. Are we supposed to type our kids?
Yeah, so I actually wrote, I think it was both an Instagram and a Facebook post about this, because I have friends from all walks of life. Some are adamantly against typing their kids, and some embrace it as I do. So, I mean, first and foremost, whatever feels the most natural to you, do it. This is just what has worked for my family. And it's like any other tool. So I know what my kids' love languages are. I know how they both receive love and show love. I know their Enneagram numbers. And I'm going to start applying some attachment styles to who they are as individuals too, because it gives me a better understanding and foundation for how each of them need to be seen and loved. Because it's not, one size fits all. So Enneagram fits in that same thing. I didn't have my kids sit down and take a test. Like, I know that my 2-year-old is Enneagram 7. Did he tell me he was an Enneagram 7 or take the test? No. But looking at different patterns that he has existed in from his birth and even in utero, he's so clearly a 7. And his nickname is 7. And so, my husband and I, we know all of their Enneagram numbers. We have a 7, Enneagram 7, Enneagram 4, Enneagram 5, and an Enneagram 3. And each of those numbers come with their own nuances, right? Like what they need to hear, what they need to be validated, how you should approach them, even in a conversation, how you can help alleviate some of the fears that weigh more heavily on their little hearts. And so it's been amazing to see them blossom when we apply all of these different parenting tools so that they understand how precious they are to my husband and myself.
Yeah, that's so good. I think too, like keeping it open to as their personality develops and changes, that it's not like, nope, you're this, obviously, right? Like you kind of go with the flow, and you're assessing them based on having that relationship as their mom, saying, okay, I know you, and so I'm thinking you're this. You're not going and being like, okay, you have to wear a sticker now that says like you're a 1 and you can't ever be anything else. But it's just, it's giving you as a mom a tool, and how can I relate to my child? And I think one thing I've seen a lot, I guess, from my childhood is a lot of times when our kids are little, we just love them and play with them, and they're full of wonder, and they listen to us, and we love them. But once they start turning into their own individual person, and they have their own feelings, and they have their own triggers, they have their own fears, they have all of that, then as parents, like we can start being like,
how the heck do I relate to my kid now? Because they're not just cute and little and I can play with them. I'm making them mad, or we're not connecting, or I don't know how to like communicate anymore. And I think the Enneagram really can help in that aspect of almost being like your translator. Like, why is it not for us? And once you learn about maybe that style that they function in, you realize, oh, like I'm communicating this way, and that's not the way that they communicate, or at least it's not how they productively communicate. I guess, how do you use the Enneagram in any of your like friendships or work relationships or anywhere outside of your family?
Yes. So all of my husband's side of the family, we speak like pure Enneagram. So like my brother-in-law will be like, well, as a 6, and all of us in like at the dining room table know that he's a 6 and that he's coming from that place. Whereas my father-in-law is an 8. And so I know to take a deep breath, that he's not, trying to go against me personally. It's just his personality. On my side of the family, it hasn't taken quite as I would have liked it, but in my head, I know what their numbers are. So I'm just like, oh, okay. So she's coming at it from this perspective. And so it helps me, even if that person didn't tell me their number. And same with my coworkers. I begged them to take Enneagram tests. And some of them do and some of them don't, but I just utilize the information. I don't like out loud say it like, oh, you're such a 5 right now. Mm-hmm. It's just something in my head that like, it just helps me navigate. But most of my friends at this point have all taken it. So I'm kind of terrible when I disagree with what someone got. It's like the number one thing you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to, and I do it all the time. But in a very loving way, because I'm taking one of my gifts, which is my intuition, my ability to see like beyond the surface, and kind of help just ask questions and see if what they answered was where they actually go to in stress, which for us can feel supernatural and it can feel like our norm, but it's not where we derive life from. It's very much, this is what I've been called to be. This is not who I was born as. And so, so that is my guilty, that like, if I'm being completely honest, that's one of my guilty things that I tend to type people.
Yeah. I think too, one thing I wanted us to touch on is how somebody can like figure out their number. I personally think those like assessments don't do as well as if you read, what's the book, Road Back to You, or I love going on, there's like 2 Instagram accounts. I'll put them in the show notes that I really like. And for my husband, I just read through them and I suspected he was a 6. And so I read some things to see if they resonated with him. And then I read some of like, I'm trying to think, some of 9 and some of 2 to see what would resonate with him most. And that I found was way more effective in figuring out my number and feeling confident in it, and figuring it out for my husband and whoever else I guide in the Enneagram ways.
Yes, that's what it is. Like, I feel like I'm an Enneagram therapist, because even so I have my own therapist, and I utilize Enneagram to help say, well, I was in 2 right now. I was in 2 during this conversation with so-and-so. And she knows now that that's me in stress. And so that's not me in my most grounded, centered place. Yeah. That's me trying to validate and earn someone's respect and love. And so it's just a wonderful tool to be able to know yourself better and those around you on a more deeper level.
Yeah. What would you say is the difference between the Enneagram test and any other of those popular personality tests? Like the Myers-Briggs was big, the DISC test, the color test, like all these different personality tests. For me, I would always get an answer and I'm like, cool. Now I have that in my back pocket, but how is that supposed to help me in my life? Where when I did the Enneagram, I felt like it actually helped me. Can you kind of just give us why is it so much better?
So for me, I believe that the Enneagram incorporates all of those personality tests that you were talking about into one, because it's the most comprehensive in that it includes wings. It includes where you go to in stress, where you go to in growth. It incorporates like your core childhood fears and the words that you need most spoken over you as an adult, and to help heal that inner child in you. And so it incorporates everything. It even has like a healthy Enneagram 4, a mid-level Enneagram 4, and an unhealthy. And so it has all this depth to it that all of the other personality tests have bits and pieces of it, but nothing is as inclusive, I believe, as the Enneagram is.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like you have to go find third-party resources for those type of tests. And I know my numbers too. Like I grew up with a social worker mom. I took all the tests, okay? But I never felt like they adjusted my life at all, where the Enneagram has given me tools in my life on how to do things like you were talking about. Why do you think everyone should find out their number? Because you were talking about how you're like begging people to take the test. Why do you think it's important for others?
Because it helps you understand yourself, and who you are is the deepest relationship you ever experience. Like there's always layers of you to better understand. There are layers of you that have been dormant, where you grew up with something, you experienced it, and it was just too painful and you shut it away. It still impacts your life, but you don't understand the degree to which it does. And Enneagram allows you all of that understanding and also tools to help you be the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
So
I agree. So, okay. Is it true that our recommendation is that you go get the book, or you go on some of those good Instagram accounts that I'll link, and you just start reading and you see what connects with you the best? Do you think there's another way you can find out your number that's good?
Yeah, I think it comes back to learning styles. So both of yours are visual. If you are an auditory, find a podcast that you relate to.
There's also a lot of YouTube too.
Yep, you can do YouTube. And so really figuring out, how you learn what you retain. If it's an audiobook, get one of listen to it there. You don't necessarily have to read it yourself. But I think that there's so many different avenues. There's graphs. There's so many different ways in which you can learn, or even just try out Enneagram and see if it's a good fit for you before you actually make the full plunge and drink the Kool-Aid.
Drink the Kool-Aid, yes. I'll link some podcasts and things like that. There's a really great YouTube that I found. And I purposely looked for YouTube because Chris is not a visual learner like me. When I was pregnant, I found that out because he would never read the daddy books. And he searched on YouTube and could not find any daddy YouTube. So we made up our mind he needs to start one. But I did find an Enneagram YouTube that I really like, and he broke it down so well, and I'll link some of those below too. But once somebody knows their number, what do they do, or how do they go about actually applying that to their life and figuring out how it affects them and how they can grow in that?
So I love utilizing people that have come before me. And so when I was super new to understanding that I was an Enneagram 4, I would go on Pinterest and just type in Enneagram 4 and just look at things and read things. Some things I kept, some things I didn't. But I just wanted to know everything that I could about being an Enneagram 4, ways in which there's different graphs that show you ways to have quiet time, ways to grow as an whatever Enneagram number you are. And some of the things I was doing and some of the things I was oh, I never thought about that, but I'm interested in trying it out. And so again, it's just kind of relying on people that have gone before you, I think, and not trying to recreate the wheel.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Going to those same resources, because the road back to you really does kind of give you a lot of things that you can implement in your life. A lot of those YouTube channels will talk about those things. And as you start and just looking up your Enneagram number, right? Going to Pinterest or Instagram or whatever, looking up hashtag Enneagram 1 or whatever it is. I've found that's where I've learned the most, and just following them and when they pop up being oh, interesting. I've seen Enneagram leadership styles or Enneagram communication styles. And that really helps me be more aware of myself and more aware of like you said, finding out people around you, what their Enneagram numbers are. you can start to be like, oh, that's why they do that in a meeting. Or that's why at Thanksgiving he always does that.
Yeah.
Like we have an Enneagram 8 in our family as well. And I think if you don't know what an 8 is, they're the person who says what you're not supposed to say at Thanksgiving, right? They're the one that's like, let's talk about politics. Let's talk about whatever. And you're like, oh no. But we love them because they get stuff done.
Yes, exactly.
Anyway, okay. Anything else to add on the topic of Enneagram?
I think the last thing I'd want to say is that Enneagram has allowed me to be deeply empathetic with individuals that I didn't understand before knowing both my Enneagram number and theirs.
Yeah.
And anything that increases empathy in our society, it's worth investigating. It's worth looking into and applying to your life, to your relationships, because our relationships impact us on such a deep level. So why not have one more thing in our tool bag that we can utilize to help deepen and better understand those we live with? Yeah,
that's so good. Anything that inspires empathy in our society is worth investigating. I'm writing that down. That's so good. Anyway, okay, cool. Thank you so much for talking to us about Enneagram and giving us all the tips and tricks, because I think you're an Enneagram guru.
I love it so much. Like every time you say a number, I'm like, oh, that's the enthusiast. Oh, that's the challenger. Oh, they go here in trust. And I'm geeked out when it comes to Enneagram. Yes.
All right, that's the end of our show with Melissa. That was just part 1. So tune in next week for part 2, where we talk about therapy. I want you to know that all of the different things we talked about, resources and such, will be in the show notes for you to access. I really encourage you to dig in. The Enneagram is such a fun thing to pursue, and you will discover so much about yourself. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to check out all of the goodness from today's episode on the show notes, and share this with a friend if it impacted you in any way. You can also leave a review on iTunes so that other mamas can join the movement of loving the woman inside the mother. Join our online Mommispace community every day by following us on Instagram at Mommispace, so you can interact with me and other mamas, be encouraged, and give your valuable input on how to make this community even more safe and inspiring for mamas all over the world. All my love to you, mama. You are enough.